Welcome to another live, from a live. Welcome to Bobby Simmons, another Bobby Simmons live topic. Our goal is to reach 200, 220 or 240, 230. Let's just see if we can reach to 230 minutes. Right now we are gonna. Right now, I'm going to read another inauguration speech from Bill Clinton's second from his re-election campaign, from his re-election. My fellow citizens, at the last presidential inauguration in the 20th century, let us lift our eyes towards the challenges that await in the next century. It is our great good fortune that time and chance have put us not only on the edge of a new century and a new millennium, but on the edge of a bright new prospect in human affairs. A moment will define our course and our character for decades to come. We must keep our old democracy forever young, guided by the ancient mission of our promised land. Let us see our sights in the land of new promise. The promise of America was born in the 18th century out of the bold conviction that we are all created equal, and extended and preserved the 19th century that we spread across the continent, saved the Union, and abolished the awful scourge of slavery. Then, in turmoil and triumph, the promise exploded onto the world stage to make this America century. And what a century it has been. America has been the mightiest industrial power to save from world from tyranny in 2 world wars and a long Cold War at time and again, and reached our continent from the globe and millions who, like us, long for the blessing of liberty. Along the way, America produced a great middle class, and a security of old age. It unraveled centers of learning and opened public schools at all. Split from the atom and explored to the heavens, invented the computer and the microchip, and deepened the wellsprings of justice by making revolution and civil rights for African Americans and all minorities by extending the circle of citizenships and opportunity and dignity to women. Now, for the third time, a new century is upon us. Another time to choose. We began the 19th century with a choice to spread our nation to coast. We begin the 20th century with a choice to harmless industrial revolution to our values of free enterprise, conservation, and human decency. Those choices made us all different. At the dawn of the 21st century, a free people must now choose the shape and forces of the information age and the global society to unleash the limited potential of all our people, and yes, to form our more perfect union. When we last gathered, our march to this new future seemed less certain than it does today. We vowed the set a clear course to renew our nation. In these 4 years, we have touched tragedy, explored by challenge, strengthened by achievement. America stands alone as the world's indispensable nation. Once again, our economy is the strongest on earth. Once again, we build stronger families, thriving communities, better educational opportunities, and a clever environment. Problems that once seemed destined to deepen now bend to our efforts. Our streets are safer, and records of our fellow citizens have moved from the welfare to work. And once again, we have resolved our time in a great debate over the role of government. Today, we can declare government is not the problem. Government is not the solution. We, the American people, we are the solution. Our founders understood that well and gave us democracy, established in the era of centuries, flexible enough to face our common challenges and advance our common dreams in each new day. As times change, the government must change. We need a new government for a new century. Humble enough not to solve all our problems for us, but be strong enough to give us tools to solve our problems for ourselves. A government that's smaller lies within its means and does more than less. Yet, where I can stand up of our values and interests in the world, or give Americans the power to make a real difference in everyday lives, government should do more, not less. The permanent mission of our new government to give all Americans an opportunity, not a guarantee, but a real opportunity to build better lives. Beyond that, my fellow citizens, The future is up to us. Our founders taught us the preservation of our liberty and our union depends upon responsible citizenship. We need a new sense of responsibility for our new century. There is a lot of work to do, work the government alone cannot do. Teach citizens to read, hiring people of welfare roles, coming out from behind locked doors and shuttered windows to help reclaim the streets from drugs and gangs and crime. Take time out for our own lives to serve others. Man, this is what Bill Clinton read about. This is what Bill Clinton spoke about in his inauguration speech. Not exactly easy. Not exactly read all this stuff in his inauguration. He must have to. Man, he must have to clear his voice for this. In 1997, in November, in January 2007. I mean 1997. This was this inauguration. His second inauguration was in January 20th, 1997. I'm taking myself a breather right now. It's uneasy to read all this stuff. Even in getting up to 220 or 230 is not easy to think. Once we reach the 7-minute mark, I will continue reading. Man, hope none of you guys are left right now because I don't know if you guys are even watching. Now, for the third time, our century is upon us, and our time is to choose. We begin the 19th century with a choice to spread our new nation from coast to coast. We begin the 20th century with a choice of harness industrial revolution for our values of enterprise and civilization and human decency. Those choices made the difference. At the dawn of the 21st century, a free people must help shape the forces of information age in global society to unleash the limited potential of our people, and yes, form a more perfect union. When we least gathered to march this new future, we have certain it does today. We vowed a clear course to renew our nation. In these 4 years, we have been touched by tragedy, inspired by challenges, strengthened by achievement. America stands alone, and the world's indispensable nation. Once again, our economy is the strongest on earth. Once again, we built stronger families, thriving communities, and better educational opportunities, a cleaner environment. But the problem is that it seems destined for deep and now bend in our effort. Our streets are safer. In record numbers, our fellow citizens have moved from welfare to work. And once again, we have received our time and a great debate over the role of government. Today, we can declare the government is not the problem. Government is not the solution. We, the American people, we are the solution. Our founders understood that well, that give us democracy and strong enough to endure the centuries, flexible enough to face our common challenges and advance our common days in each new day. And as time goes on, times change. So governments change. We need a new government for a new century, humble enough not to try and solve all our problems for us, but strong enough to give us the tools to solve our problems for ourselves. Government that is smaller lies within its means and does more with less. Yet, where we can stand up for our values and interests in the world, where it can give Americans the power to make a real difference in everyday lives, government should do more, not less. The permanent mission of our new government to give all Americans an opportunity, not a guarantee, but a real opportunity to better lives. But beyond that, my fellow citizens, the future is up to us. Our founders is the preservation of our liberty, and the union depends on upon responsible citizenship. We need a new sense of responsibility for a new century. This is work too, work that government alone cannot do. Teaching children to read, hiring people off welfare rolls, coming out from behind locked doors and shuttered windows to help reclaim our streets from drugs and gangs and crime, taking time of our own to lives to serve others. Each and every one of us, in our own way, must assume responsibility, not only for ourselves and our families, but for our neighbors and our nation. Our greatest responsibility is to embrace a new spirit of community for a new century. For any of us to succeed, we must succeed as one American. The challenge of our past remains the challenge of our future. We will be we will be one nation, one people, one common destiny, or not. We will we all come together or come apart. The virus of America's constant curse. And our new wave of immigration gives new targets to all prejudice. Prejudice and contempt cloak the pretense of religious political conviction are no different. The forces are nearly destroyed of our nation as in the past. The plague that plagues us all. The fuel of fantasia of terror and the torment of our lives of millions of fractured nations all around the world. These deceptions crippled both those who hate and, of course, those who are hated, robbing both of what we might become. We will not succumb to the dark impulses that lurk in the far regions and the soul everywhere. We shall overcome them, and shall replace them with the generous spirit of a people who will feel home with another. Our rich texture of racial, religious, and political diversity will be God sent to the 21st century. Great rewards will come with those who can live together, learn together, work together, and forge new ties to bind together. As the new era approaches, we can already see as a broad outline. 10 years ago, the internet was the mystical province of physicists today. It is a commonplace for encyclopedia for millions of school children. Scientists are now decoding the blueprints of human life, cures for most feared illness that seems close at hand. The world is no longer divided into hostile camps. Instead, now we are building bonds with nations once were our adversaries, growing connections, commerce, and cultures to give us a chance to lift the fortunes and spirits of people enrolled over. And for the very first time in our history, most people on the planet live under democracy than dictatorship. My fellow Americans, we will look back at the remarkable century. We may ask, we cannot hope, not just follow, but even surprise the achievements of the 20th century in America, and to avoid the awful bloodshed that stained its legacy. To that question, every American here and every American in our land today must answer the resounding yes, the heart of our task. With a new vision of government, new sense of responsibility, and new spirit of community, we will sustain our America's journey. The promise that we sought in a new land, we will find again in a land of new promise. In this new land, education will be every citizen's most prized possessions. Our schools will have the highest standards in the world, igniting the spark of possibility in the eyes of every girl and every boy, and the doors that higher education will open to all. The knowledge and power of the information age will be reach not just of the few, but every classroom, every library, every child. Parents and children will have the time not only to work, but to read and play together, and then plans to make at their kitchen table will be one of those better homes, a better job, or a certain chance to go to college. Our streets will echo again for the laughter of our children because no one will take them out or sell them drugs anymore. Everyone who can work will work, but today's permanent underclass part of tomorrow's growing middle class. New miracles of medicine will not only reach those can who can call them care now, but the children of hard-working families too long denied. We will stand mighty for peace and freedom. We'll maintain strong defense against terror and destruction. Our children will sleep free from the threat of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. Ports and airports, farms and factories will thrive in trade, innovation, and ideas. The world's greatest democracy will lead to the world of democracies. Our land of new promises will be a nation meet with obligations, a nation balances budget, never loses the balance of its values, a nation where our grandparents have secure retirement and health care, and our grandchildren know that we have made the reforms that necessary for sustained benefits for their time, a nation that fortifies the world's most productive economy and protects the great natural bounty of our water, air, and majestic land. And this land is a new promise that we all have reformed our politics, and the voice of people will speak louder than the din of narrow interests, and again the participation and trust of all Americans. Fellow citizens, let us blind that America, a nation, is moving forward towards realizing our full potential of all citizens, prosperity and power, and yes, important when we must maintain. Let us never forget our greatest progress that we have made, and the greatest progress has yet to make It's the human heart. In the end, all the world's wealth and thousands of armies are no match for the strength and decency of the human spirit. Right now I'm taking a breather. Let's wait until we reach number 20. Before I get back to the before I get back to before I get back to this finish the speech, let's look at the let's talk about why I was here. Right now, today, it'll be Game 5 of the Yankees versus Guardians. Right now, it's anybody's ball game. If the Yankees win, they'll be back to the American League Championship. And if they can beat the Astros in the American League Championship, they'll have another chance to get back to the series. Mostly, it's been a drought for the last 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. It's been a 12-year drought since they haven't been back to the series. Mostly they have some win. Mostly they're usually a win some, lose some guys. But right now, after a 12-year drought, after a 12-year drought, they give anything. The Yankees may have a chance to get back to the series. If they can win, all they have to do is if they can beat the Guardians and beat the Astros, they're back in the series. But if the Guardians may win, they will have to take on the Astros. And if they can beat the Astros in 4 games on October 19th, October 19th to October 26th, if they can make it, mostly for me, they have to win only 4 games. All the Guardians have to do is win 4 games if they get to the American League Championship. If they win the American League Championship, they get back to the series. And maybe they'll have a chance to win the series back in 1948. The last series they've been to was in 2016 with the Chicago Cubs. And that was the last World Series win they had was in 1948. And last World Series then they also went back to the series in 54, 95, and 95, 97, and I think 2016. That was a tough drought, but yep. Mostly back then they were win some lose some guys too. It could be anyone's ball games right now. Taking the National League Championship. Right now, the Phillies will be taking on the Padres in Game 1 tomorrow, and back on tomorrow. So today at 6:07 p.m. The Guardians take on the Yankees, and the winner will have a chance to go to the American League Championship. And if one of them wins, beat the Astros in 4 games, they go to the series. Right now and tomorrow, it'll be Phillies versus Padres. We know the Padres have been to the series but never won it. The Phillies won one series, but they've been to the series a few times. Just like the Padres, but they won once, I think. I barely remember, but if one of them can actually beat one of them can actually beat one. If one of them can actually win 4 games, they go to the series. 34 years ago, the man whose life celebrated today spoke to us down there in the end of the mall. Mail. In words that moved to the conscience of a nation, like a prophet of old, he told his dream that one day America would rise up and treat us citizens as equals before the law and in the heart. Martin Luther King Jr. was the American dream. His quest of our quest is to ceaseless striving to our live out our creed and also our history. We built such dreams and labors, and our dreams and labors will redeem the promise of America in the 21st century. To the efforts, to the effort, I pledge that all my strength and every power of my office. I ask members of the Congress here to join the join in the pledge. The American people return to the office of president in one party and a Congress another. Surely that does not advance the politics of the petty bickering and extreme partisanship of the planet explored. No, they call us instead the repairers of the breach and to move on with America's missions. America demands and deserves big things from us, but and nothing ever came from being small. Let us remember of timeless wisdom of Cardinal Benjamin with a face at the end of his own life. He said it was wrong to waste our precious gift, the time on acrimony and division. With fellow citizens, we must not waste prestigious gift of this time. For all of us, we must have the same journey of our lives and journey to come to an end, but the journey of America must go on. And so, my fellow Americans, we must be strong, and so there's much to dare. So, the demand of us are great, they are different. Let us meet them, and with faith and courage, with patience and a grateful and happy heart. Let us shape in hope of this day into the noblest chapter in our history. Yes, let us build our bridges, a bridge with a wide open and strong enough for every American to cross over and bless the land of our promise. May those generations whose face cannot yet see, whose name we may not ever know, say of us that we led our beloved land into a new century. American dream for all our children, with the American promise of more perfect union, a reality for all her people. With America's bright flame of freedom spreading throughout the world, for the height of this place in the sum of the century, let's go forth. May God strengthen our hands for the good work ahead, and always, always bless our America. Good speech, huh? This is the inaugural address from George W. Bush from January 20th, 2001. But I decided to go to the second inauguration because deep down, you guys already know that I read the first one last time. But this is the second inaugural address that I will address for George W. Bush on January 20th, 2005 that he read about. Vice President Cheney, Mr. Chief Justice, President Carter, President Bush, President Clinton, members of the United States Congress, Reverend clergy, distinguished guests, my fellow citizens. On this day, prescribed by law and marked by century, we celebrate the durable, durable wisdom of our Constitution and recall the deep commitments that unite our countries. I am grateful for the honor of this hour, the mindful of the consequential times at which where we live, and decide to fulfill our oath that I've sworn and you have witnessed. The second gathering of our duties are defined not by our words, but I use this history that we have seen together And for half a century, America defended her own freedom by standing in distant borders. And after the shipwreck of communism came of relative quiet and years of repose and years of sabbatical. Therefore, there came a day of fire. We have seen our vulnerability, and we have seen our deepest source. For as long as our whole regions of the world is slimmer in resentment and tyranny, prone to ideology and the feed of hatred and excuse, violence will gather in multiple destructive power and cross the most defended our borders and raise a mortal threat. There is only one force of history that can break the reign of hatred and resentment and expose the pretensions of tyrants or the hopes of the decent and tolerant, and that's the force of human freedom. We are led by events and common sense to one conclusion: the survival of liberty in our land increasingly depends on the success of liberty in other lands. The best hope of peace is our world of expansion and freedom in all world. Americans' vital interests of our deepest beliefs are now one. From the day of our founding, we must proclaim that every man and woman on this earth has rights, dignity, and matches values. Because they bear the image of our maker of heaven and earth across the generations, we have proclaimed the imperative of self government because no one fits to be a master. No one deserves to be a slave. Advancing these ideas is the mission of creative a nation. It is honorable achievement of our fathers. Now is the urgent requirements of our nation's security and the calling of our time. So is the policy of the United States to seek and support the growth of democratic movement and institution in every nation and culture with this ultimate goal with ending tyranny of our world. This is not a primary task of arms. They will defend ourselves and our friends with the force of arms when necessary. Freedom by its nature must be chosen and defended by citizens and sustain the rule of law and the protection of minorities. When the soul of nation finally speaks, the institution that arises reflect customs and traditions that are very different from our own. America will not oppose the own style of government and the unwilling. Our goal is instead to help others can find their own voice and attain their own freedom and make their own way. The greatest objective of ending tyranny is to concentrate the work of generators. The difficulty of the task is no excuse in avoiding it. America's influence is not unlimited, but is also fortunately oppressed. America's influence considerable will use to confidentially the freedom cause. The most solemn duty is to protect the nation and its people from future attacks and emerging threats. Some of us unwillingly choose to test America's resolve and found its firm. We will precisely clarify the choice before every ruler in every nation. The moral choice between oppression, and which is always wrong, and freedom, which is eternally right. America will not pretend to be the jailed descendants prefer the chains, or the women welcome humiliation and servitude, and the human being aspires to live with the mercy of bullies. Man, this is a big speech that George W. Bush had to speak in the second inauguration. I wonder if you guys are tired. Yep, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Wonder if anybody's even watching anyway. You think anyone is? I don't know. All right, let's get back. We will encourage reform in our governments by making that success in our relations will require the decent treatment of their own people. American belief in human dignity will guide our policies, yet rights must be our grudging concession of dictators. They are secured by a free dissent and participation of the government in the long run. There is no justice without freedom, and there can be no human rights without human integrity. Some I have known the questions of global appeal of liberty through the time in history and 4 decades defined by the swiftest advances of freedom ever seen is an old and an odd time for doubt. Americans of all people should never be surprised in power of our ideas. Eventually the call of freedom comes to every mind and every soul. We do not accept existence of permanent tyranny, and because we do not accept possibility of permanent slavery. Liberty will come those who love it. Today, America speaks anew to the people of the world. All who live in tyranny and hopelessness can now know the United States will ignore your impressions or excuse of oppressors. When you stand in your liberty, we will stand with you. Democratic reformers facing repression, prison, or exile can know that America sees you who you are, the future leaders of our free country. A future outlaw of regimes can still believe that American, as Abraham Lincoln did, those who deny freedom of those others who deserve not for themselves and for the rule of just God cannot long retain it. The leaders of government will long have its control the need to know. To serve your people, we must learn to trust them. To start on the journey of the progress and of government justice, and America will walk at your side. And all the allies in the United States can know we honor our friendship. We rely on your counsel. We depend on your help. Divisions amongst nations and your primary goal of freedom enemies. Their core effort, free nation, promote democracy and prelude the enemy's defeat. Today I speak anew and to my fellow citizens. From all of you, I ask for patience in the hand task of securing America, which you have granted and secure in good measure. Our country has accepted obligations that are difficult to fulfill and would dishonorable to abandon. Yet, because you have acted upon the great liberation of this nation, tens of millions have achieved their freedom, and hope kindles hope. Millions will find it. By our efforts, we have lit this fire as a fire that in metal and minds of men. It warms those who feels the power. It burns who fights the progress, and one of the untamed fire of freedom will reach the darkest corners of our world. Few Americans have selected the hardest duties in this cause. It's the quiet work of intelligence and diplomacy, the idealistic work of helping raise us to free government, the dangerous and necessary work of fighting our enemies. Some have shown the devotion of our country in debts and honored our whole lives. We will honor the names and their sacrifice. All Americans have witnessed the idealism, and some for the first time. I ask our youngest citizens to believe in evidence in our eyes. You have seen our duty and allegiance and determined faces of our soldiers. You have seen the life is fragile and evil is real, and the courage triumphs. Make the choice to serve in a cause larger than your wants, larger than yourself, and in your days will not add not just the wealth of our country, but to its character. America needs idealism and courage because we have the essential work at home, the unfinished work of freedom, American freedom, and a road moving towards liberty. We are determined to show the meaning of promise of liberty. In the American ideal of freedom, citizens find the dignity of security to economic independence instead of laboring on the edge of substance. This is the broader definition of the Liberty and Motivated Homestead Act, the Social Security Act, and the GI Bill of Rights. And now we extend the vision of reforming and great institutions to serve the needs of time. To give every American a stake and promise and future of our country, we will bring the highest standards of our schools and build our own ownership society. We will widen the ownership of citizens, homes and business, retirement and savings, and health insurance, preparing our people for the challenge of life in a free society by making every citizen of an agent of his and or her own destiny. We will give our fellow Americans greater freedom from want and fear and make our society more prosperous and just and equal. In Americans' idea of freedom, the public interest depends on the private character, so of integrity and tolerance towards others, and the role of conscience of our own lives. Self-government relies, in the end, on the government governing of itself. The ideas of character in built-in families supported by communities with standards and sustain our nation by the truths and the Sinai, the Sermon on the Mount, and the words of the Koran, and the varied faiths of our people. Americans must move forward in every generation, reaffirm that God is the true king for the ideas of justice and conduct are the same yesterday, today, and forever. Man. Big work. Man, this thing is a really long speech. There's more out here, but I'm gonna take myself a breather right now. Well, my goal is to reach 200. My goal is to reach 230 or 40, whichever comes first. I have no idea how far are we anyway. Well, we're almost close to reaching our goal today. In the year 2000, in the November 2000, it was a close race between Al Gore and George W. Bush back then. But Al Gore conceded in number two. I don't even know who actually would have won, but that's the reason why Al Gore conceded because I don't think it was a one-win back then in Florida. Even though a lot of people thought he actually won it, but mostly it was my fault because I voted for Al Gore, and that's the problem with me. If I voted for George W. Bush, Al would have won. So that's my first lesson right there: is never vote for the guy who might lose. Always support the guy who might win, but always vote for the guy who may not win. Right now it's 38 minutes right now, so we're gonna keep going. Besides, our promise right now is to reach the 50, to reach the 220 mark, or the 230 or 40 mark. Actually, I think it's at the 120 or actually it's 140 mark. We should have, because I think that I forgot 200 minutes. That's like 3 hours. I think I had, so it has to be around 230 or 240. We should do it. I mean 130 or 140. I usually lose that in the same time. Sometimes I usually keep forgetting things a lot of times. You know, even reading George W. Bush's inauguration speech in the second term. Now that was tough. Yep, don't you love my hands? Yep. Right now, our goal is to reach. Right now, our goal is to reach 130 or 40 minutes. Oh, man, I'm so tired. I guess we all are. Even I did this in America's idea of freedom and the exercise of rights of imbibed by the service and mercy in the hearts of the weak. Liberty is for all of us by not independence from one another. Our nation relies on men and women to look after our neighbor and surrounded by the lost with love and America at our best. The values in the life one another must always remember those who wanted to have worth. And our country must abandon all the habits of racism, but we cannot carry the message of freedom and the baggage of bigotry in the same time. From the perspective of a single day, include the dedication, the issues and questions before our country are many. From the viewpoint of centuries, the questions come to the narrowed and few. Did our generation advance the cause of freedom and character, bringing the credit of the cause? The questions that judge also unite us, because Americans in every party and background, Americans by choice and by birth, are bound to one another in the cause of freedom. We have known divisions which we heal to move in a greatest purpose. I will strive in the good faith to heal them. Yet in those divisions are not defined America. We felt the unity and fellowship of our nation when freedom came under attack, and our response came in like a single hand over a single heart. We can feel that the same unity and pride whenever America acts for good, and the victims of disasters and given hope. The unjust encounter justice, and the captives are set free. We will, we go forward and complete the confidence in the eventual triumph of freedom. Not because of history runs in the wheels of inevitability, it is the human choices that move events. Not because we consider ourselves a chosen nation. God moves and chooses as He wills. We have confidence because of freedom is the permanent hope of mankind, the hunger in dark places and longing of the soul. When our founders declared the new order of ages, when soldiers died in the wave upon wave of union based on liberty, when citizens marched in peaceful outrage under the barriers, freedom now. They were acting on ancient hope that means that we fulfilled. History has ebb and flow of justice, but history has the visible direction and liberty of author of liberty. When the Declaration of Independence first read in public, Liberty Hall was sounded in celebration, and witness said it rang as if it meant something. In our times, it meant something still. America in this young century proclaims liberty throughout the world, and all inhabitants thereof, renewed our strength, tested but not weary, where we are ready for the greatest achievement in history of freedom. May God bless you and have watch over the United States of America. This is an inauguration speech from Abraham Lincoln, Saturday, March 4th, 1865, before he died. This was his inauguration speech he spoke about. And the day he promised that he would end slavery back then. At the second appealing to take the oath of the presidential office, there is a less exhaustive extended address that there is first. There's a statement somewhat detailed, of course, to be pursued by fitting and proper. Now, an expiration for 4 years during the public declarations have constantly called forth in every point and phrase of the greater contest, still observes the intention and gross the energies of this nation. Little that is new could be presented. The progress of our arms, which upon chiefly depends, well is known to the public, to myself, and is, I trust, reasonably satisfactory and encouraging to all. With hopes of the future, no prediction in regard to its venture. On the occasion of correspondence 4 years ago, our thoughts were anxiously directed to the impending Civil War. All sought to avert it. While the inauguration address is delivered from this place and devoted together to save the Union without war, insurgent agents were in the city seeking to destroy without war, seeking to dissolve the Union and divide effects and negotiations. Both parties declared war, and one of our them is make war rather than the nation survive. And our Another would accept war rather than let it perish, and the war came. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized to the southern part of. These slaves constitute the particular power interest. All I knew was the interest somehow caused the war. The strengthen, the purpulate, and extend the interest was called the object of which insurgents would rather rend in the Union even by the war, while government claimed no right to do more than restrict territorial engagement. Neither party expected the war, the magnitude and duration, or has attained. Neither has anticipated the cause, the conflict that might cease, with or even before the conflict of should cease. Each looked the easier triumph and the result of fundamental and astounding. Both read the same Bible and prayed to the same God, and each invokes his aid against other. May seem strange that anyone should ask God's assistance in wringing the bread from the sweat of other men's faces. But let's judge not, that we not be judged. The prayers we both could not be answered, that neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has its own purpose. Woe unto the world because of the offense, it needs the offense comes. But woe to the one whom his offense cometh. If we shall suppose the American slavery is one of the offenses which is providence of God, must need comes, but which have continued throughout the appointed time. He now wills to remove, and that he gives both north and south the terrible war, the woe, and those by whom the offense came. Shall we discern therefore the departure of the divine attributes which believers in the living God always ascribe to him. Finally, do we hope, and firmly do we pray, that we might scourge of war, we may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills to continue until all wealth piled by the bondsmen to 250 years, and credit shall be sunk, not until every drop of blood is drawn to the last shell, paid by another man with a sword, said 3,000 years ago, and still must said the judgment of the Lord are true and righteous together. We must mouse towards none, the clear and charity of all men. The firmness the right of God gives us, and the sea of the right. Let us strive to finish the work that we are in, to bind our nation's wounds, to care firm and born to the battle for those widows and orphans, to which we achieve to cherish the lasting peace amongst ourselves and with our nations. This was Abraham Lincoln's second inauguration address from March 4th, 1865, about what he did to fight for freedom back then, and what this inauguration address helped inspire the Gettysburg Address, and help the Union win against the Confederates, and then also ended slavery. Each inauguration always had a purpose, but what we stand for back then. Well, right now, give me a couple more minutes. I'll read another inauguration right now. I know you guys already read it a lot, but let's read another one. This one will be from Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965. I know you guys are really tired right now, and so am I. Once we reach our 50th mark, I will read the Lyndon Baines Johnson's inaugural address. Each of these inauguration addresses always meant one thing after we get sworn in, about what we're not just about what to say, but how we're going to change America, or what we're planning to, or how we shape America, or how we change it. That's what each president or congressman or senator tries to do. What they want to do is change the world. Well, Lyndon B. Johnson was the man who could change it. Well, he won re-election back then. My fellow countrymen, on this occasion, the oath I have taken before you and before God is not mine alone, but ours together. We are one nation and one people. Our fate of our nation and our future as a people rests not upon one citizen, but upon all citizens. This is the majesty and the meaning of this moment. From every generation, this is a destiny. For some, history decides for this generation, and choice must be your own. Every now, a rocket moves towards Mars. It reminds us that we will not be the same for our children, or even ourselves, or the short span of years. The next man standing there will look on a scene different from our own. Besides of our Besides ours is a time of change, rapid and fantastic change, bearing the secrets of our natures, multiplying the nations, placing in uncertain hands new weapons, mastering destruction, shaking old values, and upholding old ways. Our destiny is the minds to change that will rest on the unchanged characters of our people and our faith, the American convenient. They came here, the exile and the stranger, brave and but frightened, to find a place that man could be his own man. They made covenant with this land, conceive in justice, written in liberty, bound in the union. We must inspire the hopes of mankind and binds us still. If we keep in terms, we shall flourish. Justice and change. For the justice we promised, for that we made the journey that would share the fruits of the land. In the land of great wealth, we must not live on hopeless poverty. In the land of rich and harvest, children just might not go hungry in the land of healing miracles. Neighbors may not suffer and die unattended. In a great land of learning and scholars, young people must be taught to read and write. For the most of 30 years that I have served in the nation, I have believed that injustice to our people, the waste of our resources, was our real enemy. For 3 years or more, with the resources I have vigilantly fought against it. I have learned and know it will not surrender easily. But the change has given the new weapons before the generation of America is finished. This enemy will not only retreat, but will be conquered. Justice requires to remember that when citizens denies his fellow, saying his color is not mine, his beliefs are strange or indifferent, in the moment he betrays America through his forebears created this nation. Liberty and change. Liberty was the second article of our convention. It was self-government. It was our Bill of Rights, but it was more America would be placed where each man could be proud to be himself, strengthening his talents, rejoicing in his work, important the life of his neighbors and his nation. This has become more difficult in a world where change and growth seems to tower beyond the control and even the judgment of men. We must work to provide the knowledge and the surroundings of which can enlarge the possibilities of every citizen. The American Convention has called upon us to show the way of liberation of man, and that is today of our goal. Thus, as our nation, there is much outside of control, and as people, there is no stranger outside of our hope. Change have brought new meaning of that old mission. We can never again stand aside, prideful and isolation. Terrific dangers and troubles that what we once called for and now constantly live amongst us. If America lives, must end. America treasures be spilled in countries we barely know. That is the price of the change has demanded the conviction and our enduring covenant. Think of our world as it looks from the rocket that is headed towards Mars. It's like a child's globe hanging in space. The continents suck its two sides with the colored maps. We are fellow passengers and a dot to learn, and each of us in the span of time has really had one moment among our companions. How incredible in that is fragile existence that we should destroy one another. These possibilities, enough of us will abandon the mastery of others and the mastery of nature. The world enough for all seek the happiness their own way. Tough speech, isn't it? For Lyndon B. Johnson to speak out on. Give myself a breather, but Well, I have to rest my voice. I'm going to give myself another minute. I'm going to give myself, when we reach the 60th mark, we will get back to the speech. All right, Yankees trivia right now. I'm trying to think of somebody. Who was the voice of the Yankees back in the 1930s or 40s and 50s and 60s? He was the greatest commentator of all time and also great sportscaster who spoke, who was the voice of the Yankees back then. There were a lot of radio and TV personalities for the Yankees, but this guy was no exception. He was one of the best ever. I can give you a hint right now, but let's just say his initials are M.A. Well, if anyone's still there right now, there's a reason I'm taking a break right now because right now I don't want to waste it. If I want to reach 130 or 40 minutes, we have to. Right now, I gotta save some more time because, hey, I don't know. Hey, besides, I can't read all the way through 140 minutes because I don't even know what we're doing. You know, there was a famous baseball player who became a great sportscaster, who was his broadcast partner. That was Phil Rizzuto. Phil Rizzuto was this guy's broadcast partner. You know, take like in the Chicago Cubs, we had Harry Carey back then. He was the greatest voiceover. He was the greatest commentator for the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals back then. And we had Bob Uecker back then. He also hosted. You know, he commentated for the Milwaukee Brewers. At least he broadcast one World Series for the Brewers. But he broadcast other World Series too, but not for the Brewers. I think he was really disappointed in that one. Well, Bob Uecker was the greatest sportscaster of all time. No one could broadcast like he could. The guy's in his 80s right now. I can't believe he's still alive. I wonder if the guy will ever retire right now. You love him those Miller Lite commercials he did with Ronnie Dangerfield and Bubba Smith. There were other great. There's also Vince Scully and Red Barber, who were the broadcast giants, were the greatest broadcasters for the Dodgers and the Dodgers back then. Greatest broadcasters of all time when like Vince Scully and also Red Barber. At least they got the broadcast all the way through. At least Red Barber got to see Jackie Robinson broadcast play and then playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Helped turn that team around. We're almost at the 60th mark right now. I know you guys are tired right now, so am I. The answer is Mel Allen. He was the voice of the Yankees, greatest broadcaster of all time. That he broadcast from the '60s and the '50s or '40s or '30s. But you got to see. But he's seen a lot of American League championships and pennants, American League championships and World Series while he was broadcasting the Yankees games. There were other million other guys out there, but no one could do what Mel Allen could. No one could do what Mel Allen could do. All right, so let's get back to the. Let's get back. Justice requires us to remember that when any citizen denies his fellow saying, "The color is not mine," his beliefs strange and are different, and the liberty he betrays America. There are both for us to create the nation, liberty and change. Liberty was the second article of our convenient. It was self-government. It was our Bill of Rights. It was more. And America would be a place where each man could be proud to himself, stretching his talents, rejoicing in his work, born into the life of neighbors and the nation. This has this has become more difficult in a world where change and growth seem to tower beyond control and even the judgment of man. We must provide the knowledge and the surroundings which can enlarge the possibilities of every citizen. The American Covenant called upon us to help show the way of liberation of man, and today is our goal. That if a nation there is there's much outside of control and people, no stranger is side of our hope. Change have brought new meaning to that old mission. We can never again stand aside in prideful in isolation. Terrific dangers and troubles that once called for and now constantly live amongst us. If America live must end. America's treasure be spilled in country we barely know. That is the price that changes has demanded conviction in our daring covenant. Think of our world that looks from the rocket that is heading towards Mars. It is like a child's globe hanging in space and the continents stuck into its side of our colored maps. We are fellow passengers on the dot of Earth, and each of us in the span of time and a moment among our companions. How incredible it is that the fragile existence we should hate and destroy another. There are possibilities enough for this abandoned mastery over the pursuit mastery over nature. There is a there is a world enough to seek their happiness in our own way. Our nation corpse is abundantly clear that we aspire to nothing that belongs to others. We seek no dominant dominion over our fellow men, but advance dominion over tyranny and misery. But is more required. Man want to be a common enterprise, a cause greater than themselves. Each of us must find a way to advance in the purpose of the nation, thus finding our purpose from ourselves, and without this, we shall become a nation of strangers. The Union and Change. The third article was a union. To those who are small, few against the wilderness, the success of liberties demanded the strength of union. 2 centuries of our nation have made it true again. No longer need the capitalists of workers and clerk in city and countryside struggle to divide our bounty. By working shoulder to shoulder, together we can increase the bounty of all. We have discovered that every child who learns, every man who finds work, every sick body that is being whole, like a candle adds to the altar, brightens the hope of our faithful. So let's reject any amongst us to seek to reopen old wounds, rekindle our hatreds, and extend the ways of seeking nation. Let's join the reasons to faith and action experience to transform of unity of interest into unity of purpose. For the hour and the day and the time are here to achieve progress without strife, to achieve change without hatred, not without the difference of opinion, without the deep and abiding division and the scar of the union for generations. The American belief, under the convenience of justice, liberty, and union, have become the nation and prosperous, great, and mighty. We have kept our freedom, but we have no promise from God of our greatness will endure and be allowed to seek greatness from the sweat and the strength of our spirits. I do not believe that great society is ordered. The chart changes in the serial battalion of the ants. It is the excitement of always becoming, trying, probing, failing, resting, and the trying again, but always trying and always gaining. In each generation, with toil and tears, we have to earn our heritage again. If we fail now, we shall not have forgotten the abundance of what we learned in hardships. Democracy rests its faith in the freedom it asks more than it gives. It is the judgment of God and the harshness of those who are most favored. If we succeed, it will not be because of what we have, it will be because of what we are, not because of what we own. It's but rather because of what we believe. For for we are the nation of believers. Underneath the clamor of building and the rush of the day pursuits, and we believe in justice and liberty and union. And in our union, we believe that every man must someday be free and believe in ourselves. Our enemies has always made the same mistakes in my lifetime, and oppression and war have waited our defeat. Each time from our secret places an American's heart came forth in the for the faith that could not see and they will not cannot imagine. For it brought us victory and it will again. For those of what America is all about, from the undisclosed desert and the unclimbed bridge, it is the star that has not reached and the harvest sleeping in unpowered ground. It will be our gone, is our world gone, and we say farewell, and a new world coming. Why we welcome it and we bend it to the hopes of the man. To these entrusted public servants and to my family and those close friends who have followed me down a long winding road and to all these peoples and unions in the world. I will repeat today what I said in the sorrow day in November 1963. I will lead and I will do the best I can. But we must look with our own hearts and our own promises and the old dreams. They will lead you at best of all. For myself, I ask only in the words of ancient leader. Give me now wisdom and knowledge that I may go out and come before the people who can judge thy people that is so great. That was from Lyndon B. Johnson from January 20th, 1965. Further, was a two-term president. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected 4 times. Nobody's ever done that before. Ever been elected 4 times. Like I said, each inaugural address easily are. Well, right now I have no idea. Right now we are gonna do it. Right now, I'm gonna get to. Right now, I'm gonna get to another topic about the New York Yankees trivia. Right now. Once we reach the 70th mark, I will give you a New York Yankee trivia. Actually, I want to skip the Yankees and get to the World Series, 1995. It's gonna take a while. Well, I'm getting there as fast as I can anyway. Welcome to the 1995 World Series. Tell me, who was the man? I want to give you a hint right now. I'm going to give you a trivia question for the Cleveland Indians. The Cleveland Indians have been to the 1995 World Series and when they took on the Atlanta Braves. Who was the manager of the Cleveland Indians back in 1995? And we will wait until we reach the ninth, and we will wait until we reach the eighth mark, and I will tell you who was the manager of the Cleveland Indians of 1995. Yeah, 1995 was a tough game back then. Back in 1994, the baseball players were on strike back then. So was hockey. They all wanted a fair deal. Mostly, yeah. Thank God we didn't. Thank God that strike was over in the end of 1994 because we missed baseball back then, and we also missed hockey. That was the worst day for all of us back then. Is no hockey, no baseball back then. Mostly we had to have replacement players back then, but thank God we didn't go through that. There were strikes for from take like the back take like after 1998 of the NBA finals. We had an NBA lockout. We had it's called the NBA lockout is where they have another NBA strike back then. They needed a fair deal, just like Major League Baseball needed a fair deal too. If the players why the players went on strike in the first place in '94. I wonder if anybody's watching right now. Back in 1993 and '92, name one team that won the World Series back to back in '92 and '93. Back then, that was the Toronto Blue Jays. Back then, I was going to give you the mess. I was going to tell you who won the 1995 World Series against the Atlanta Braves versus the Cleveland Indians, and who was the manager of the Cleveland Indians back then. We were going to take our time for that one right there. Like I said, the Toronto Blue Jays the first time that Canada actually won the World Series outside our country. Cito Gaston also was the manager for the Toronto Blue Jays back then, and he took his team to the World Series twice. He was also in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2002. It's kind of hard to get in the Hall of Fame a lot of times. The next Hall of Fame is in 2022. Before we get to take like in 2022 was in the Hall of Fame. There was David Orich from Boston Red Sox. He was a designated hitter. He played 1997 through 2016. There's Bud Fowler. He was an executive from 1878 to 1891, 1898. But no one even knew who he was back then. But he wasn't Hall of Fame back then. There's Gil Hodges from the Brooklyn Dodgers from 47 to 63. He was a first baseman there. And man, I can't believe it took a long time to get him in the Hall of Fame back then. There's also Jim Kaat for the Minnesota Twins. He played in 1950. He was the pitcher, and he also played 1959 to 1983. I don't think it was even that good, but at least he played. There's also Minnie Manuso, who was a left fielder for the Chicago White Sox. And there's Buck O'Neil, he was an executive of the Kansas City Monarchs. And there's Tony Olivia, the Minnesota Twins from 1962 to 1976. He was a right fielder. None of these guys were really important back then. Back in the 1992 World Series, CBS broadcast the game in 1992 World Series. Even in 93, it was the same thing as CBS. Right now in 1995, ABC and NBC are broadcast the games. ABC broadcast the World Series from Game 1, 4, and 5. And NBC broadcast Game 2, 3, and 6 back then. Much as I want to tell you about who is the Cleveland Indians manager right now and who won the World Series. 95. I can't tell you that because we're not in the 8th mark yet. You have to figure this out yourself. I bet you guys could type it in right now if you want to and tell me. I bet you guys are really bored right now. Well, so am I. But like I said, my goal is to reach 130 or 140 minutes. The winning the World Series is a great honor back then. Playing in it is a better honor. But some teams have a chance to get to the series, some don't. It's like being the Super Bowl back then. Each team loved to get to the Super Bowl back then. It's hard to get in, hard to get in sometimes. Yep, okay. We're in these marks, though. I will Now here's your answer. Cleveland Indians manager was Mike Hargrove. He managed the Cleveland Indians back then. He was also in the Cleveland Guardians Hall of Fame. He never made the Baseball Hall of Fame, but he managed the Indians from 1991 through 1999. It was really disappointing that he never got to. It was really disappointing that he never got to manage a World Series team back then. He never got to. He never got to win a World Series back then. But at least his team worked really hard to get to the series. Played in it. That was good enough for him back then. Let's get to the next World Series. Welcome to the year 2000. The year 2000 World Series and the beginning of the millennium. Right now, I was going to tell you who managed the New York Mets back then, and who won the World Series in the 2000 World Series between the Yankees versus the Mets. You know, we call that the Subway Series back then. The Subway Series is where two New York teams get to play in different areas from the American and National League. Right now, the Dodgers and the Yankees. Back then, the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Yankees were in the Subway Series, just like when the Yankees were playing against the Giants, New York Giants back then. Before those teams moved to LA and San Francisco back then. That's when they brought even after the Mets and Giant after the Mets, even after the Giants and even after the Giants and Dodgers moved, New York still wanted a national baseball league. So they created the New York Mets. When the New York Mets were formed back then, it's simple. The answer was 1962. 1962, after the teams moved from Los Angeles and San Francisco, the Mets were formed in 1962. William Shea was the founder of the New York Mets. They named a stadium after him once. Before they moved to City Field. No one, a lot of times, no one knew who William Shea was. He was the founder of the Mets. William Shea should have been on the Hall of Fame. Right now, once we reach our 90th mark right now, we will. Once we reach our 90th mark right now, I will tell you who won the Subway Series against the Mets versus the Yankees, and who was the manager of the New York Mets back then. I'm not going to tell you when until we reach the 90th mark. The World Series was broadcast in 2000 on Fox. Fox got the rights for the World Series back then. They even got the rights from the Super Bowl too. Well, I think NBA Finals usually goes to the NBA now, to ABC now instead of NBC. I guess they lost. Man, I can't believe they lost the rights on that. Kind of lost the ratings back in NBC back then. It was a big mistake back then to lose the NBA rights, NBA Finals rights. Boosted boosted the ratings for NBC back then. When Michael Jordan played for the finals 3 times. There's a what if I was kind of keep thinking about. What if Michael Jordan actually stayed in baseball? He could have been called up in the White Sox and also took that team to the series. Because he took that team in. If Michael stayed in the Major League Baseball and got called up, he might have had a chance to turn that team around. He might have had a chance to get that team to the series. Most of everyday pro athletes ever switched to pro sports. The only 2 people I ever known ever played both sports was Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson. It was kind of tough to do. It's kind of tough playing 2 sports at once. But these 2 found a way to make it work. But Deion Sanders was the first pro athlete to play in both the World Series and the Super Bowl back then. I know you guys are tired right now, and so am I. But we're getting into there, to this World Series event. Even my prediction between the Yankees versus Guardians, it could be anyone's ball game right now. Yep, we're almost there yet. Yep, we're in 90, so I will tell you now. New York Yankees beat the New York Mets 4 games to 1 back then. Well, felt bad for the Mets, but they also went back to the series back in 2014. I think it was 2015. Bobby Valentine managed the New York Mets back then. Well, he managed the Mets from 96 through 2002. 97, 98, 99, 2001, 2, 6 seasons. Yeah, Bobby Valentine was the greatest manager of all time. Well, let's get to another World Series. Well, here's another Subway Series, except this is in LA to San Francisco. I think we call that the Train Series, or we call it Coast to Coast. The Anaheim Angels took on the San Francisco Giants back then. Who was the manager of the Anaheim Angels? Who was the manager of the Anaheim Angels? Who won the 2002 World Series back between the Anaheim Angels and San Francisco Giants? I can tell you right now, Barry Bonds played in the World Series back then, but I think he should have won. His team should have won that series back then in 2002. I guess it was disappointing on that one right then. Once we reach our 100th mark, I will tell you who managed the Anaheim Angels and who won that World Series back then. Well, Fox broadcast 2002 World Series back then. This is the first time the Angels have won the pennant. They came close to the American League championships. They came close to winning the pennant a few times, but they always choke under pressure. But this is the time they finally get to the series. I can tell you who won this. I can tell you who won it, but I can tell you who won it. But right now, our goal is to reach 100. Right now, once we reach 100, I will tell you who won, because that'll be fair for you. So tell me, who do you think could win the? Tell me, who do you think could win the World Series back then? In 2022, could be anyone's ball game. Besides, if the Yankees get to the series, they may have to take on either the Phillies or the Guardians back then. It'll be New York and Philadelphia, and that's both of them are train rides away. Mostly it's a train or like an hour drive from here. Mostly there's cross sections between Pennsylvania to New Jersey to Pennsylvania to New Jersey. That reaches New York City back then. Also, if you forgot Connecticut, it also reaches the New York area. People work in New York City, but some people, if you're wealthy, if you're rich, some people who may work in New York but also end up living in Connecticut. It's kind of like in New Jersey. You know, people work in New Jersey, but they also live in New Jersey. People work in New York, but people live in New Jersey. Live in New Jersey. It's like if you got a job and if you work in New York and move to New Jersey, that is one thing that is one thing you can do. Well, mostly from Los Angeles to San Francisco, 6 hour drive. But by but if you're going to take a plane there, it's 338 miles. Mostly it's like an hour. Mostly it's an hour, 1 hour and 21 minutes if you take an airplane. But to drive, you know, to well, it will take 6 hours to get there. But by plane, it's 1 hour. That's what it felt like That's what it felt like when you played in the World Series. Mostly for me, I think they're not. Mostly for me, if they take the plane, it would take an hour to get there. To get mostly would take a plane to get to San Francisco to L.A. Mostly if they had to drive, take the bus. It would have been a 6 hour drive. We're almost. I can tell you we're almost there, but we're in the 98th. We're in 98 right now, so we're not there yet. You know, one thing you always love about the Giants is McCovey Cove. That's usually what's famous for. We call the splashettes. You know, trust me, they hit a lot of home runs outside McCovey Cove back then. Well, right now we're almost there, and I know you're tired right now. All right, we're in the 100 mark, so the Anaheim Angels beating the San Francisco Giants 4 games to 3. And Mike Scosi, it's kind of hard to say his name, so it's Mike. His last name is SCI OSCIA. He managed the Angels from 2000 to 2018. He also played for the Dodgers from 1980 to 1992, and he was also a good manager back then. It's kind of hard to live up to a guy like that. Sorry about that. Well, right now let's get to the next World Series. Back then, we're in the 2003 World Series back then, and that was a tough game back then, and that was a worse year for the Cubs back in 2003 World Series back then. The Cubs could have, the Cubs could have won the National League Series back then, but a guy named Steve Barton kind of messed it up for us back then. He was kind of blamed back then, but we all forgave him for that back then. And guess who won 2003 World Series? It was the same team that they beat the Chicago Cubs from, and also Steve Barton, who cost them the chance to go to the series back then. And guess who managed? And guess who managed? And ask me who managed the Florida Marlins back then in 2003. Well, Fox covered this event. Once we reach the 110 mark, I will tell you who won the 2003 World Series and which team beat the Chicago Cubs for the National League Championship Series. That Steve Barton cost that team the series, cost the Cubs the series back then, and who managed that team. We're almost there right now, but right now we're trying to get to that part. Well, I know you guys are all tired right now. Well, the National League Championship 2003, we call it the worst day of our life for the Cubs back then. It was Game 6, and we the Cubs had a chance to win the series back then. But I was going to tell you which team won that series. But we'll get to that soon in a minute. Once we reach the 120th mark. Once we get to the 110 mark. I know you guys are practically tired right now. Well, so am I. It's 5 o'clock and 5:08 p.m. in my time right now. I don't know what time is it there. I don't even know if anybody's even watching. By the way, can you spell? By the way, can you spell home run? Well, I know you guys are not gonna type it right now. You guys type home run. Can you type it? Can you text home run? Well, I can spell for you. HOMERUN. Home run. This is our trivia question about what team cost the Cubs the World Series? Cubs lost the World Series in 2003, and what cost Steve Bartman? That Steve Bartman cost the Cubs the National League, the pennant, and also the chance to go to the series back then, and the team the Cubs lost out to that went the World Series and won it. We're about to get there pretty soon. Yep, it's 109. Yep, if anyone's speaking right now, seeing this right now, just hope anyone knows who could win the series back then. Yep, we're in 110 minutes now, so I will tell you. The Florida Marlins beat the New York Yankees 4-2, and Florida Marlins beat the Cubs back in the National League Championship Series. That Steve Bartman cost the Cubs the pennant and also the chance to go to the series by Steve Bartman catching the foul ball. That cost the Cubs not only the World Series, but also got the Florida Marlins to win the pennant and win the series too. That was it, man. That was a tough incident back then for Steve Bartman. All right, let's get to 2004 World Series. This is a tough game. This was a tough game. After the Red Sox, well, the Red Sox been to the series a few times, even from 1986, from the 1975, but never won it. Who won the World Series? Who won the 2004 World Series against the Boston Red Sox versus the St. Louis Cardinals? And who was the manager of the Boston Red Sox back then in 2004? I wish I could tell you, but we have to wait until we reach the 120th mark right now. It's kind of boring right now. Well, it could be anyone's ball game right now. You have to wait until we reach the. Once we reach the 120 mark, I will tell you who won. It's time to ring. Sorry about that, technical difficulties. The St. Louis Cardinals been to the series a few times. Been to the series a few times. In 1987 was the last time they. 1987 was the last time they've been to the series, and they've been to the World Series. They lost that World Series in 1987, but they were there. So I guess they were just like the Yankees. They were also in a drought too. 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 1000, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that was a 17 season drought, just like the Yankees were in that night after 1981. The American League Championship in 2004 was a tough game back then. We're almost there yet for the 120 mark. No, actually, I'm not. I'm not. But I guess I was trying to make you guys feel better. I don't know if you guys are still watching, or if I'm still watching, or anyone else is still watching. Yep, the 2004 World Series was a tough game back then. The last time the Sox won the series was in 19. Was back in 1986. in 75. You know how long that drought was in 1986, after 1986? 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 1001, 2, 3, 4. That's 18 years. The 18 season drought. You know, that was a tough game. You know, that was an 18-year drought back then. Just like the Cardinals drought from the series. But after 1918, but late Red Sox went back to the series. But one thing that always bothers them the most is they never actually won the World Series after 1918 World Series when they, you know, we call that the curse of the Bambino back then. Is when they sold Ruth to the Yankees, and Harry Frazee made a bad choice back then. Harry Frazee made a bad choice back then. No, back then, I know he was struggling, but not only did he sold Ruth to the Yankees back then, it also cost the Red Sox the series. Even on Rich Watch, they've been to the series 3 times. And boy, did they made a mistake when they sold him to the Yankees. That's what even Ruth had to prove to everybody that on his watch, that proved that the Yankees, the people need to be Ruth. Even when Ruth played for the Yankees back then, they've been in the series 7 times, and only won 4 times. Well, right now we're trying to get to our goal back then. In 2004, I think in 2004, Red Sox was trying to in the World Series. Was a tough time back then. We are trying to break the curse. Even the Steve Bartman incident, and also that with the Billy Go back in the Cubs in 2016, that was a tough thing for the Cubs back then. But cost them a chance to go to the series back then. But at least they found teams to get back to the series. Well, we're almost there right now. Pretty soon once we return 20, I will tell you who won against the Boston Red Sox versus the St. Louis Cardinals, and who the Red Sox manager is. Well, the Boston Red Sox beat the St. Louis Cardinals 4-0 4 games to 0. Terry Francona. It's kind of hard to say his name. Terry Francona. Farncona. He managed the Boston Red Sox back then. Well, Terry Francona was one of the best top managers of all time when he took that team to the series. He was manager of the year from 2013 and 2016 back then. Tony La Russa also managed the St. Louis Cardinals back then. He was a Hall of Famer in 2014. Let's get to 2006, 2005. This broke the Black Sox scandal. The Chicago White Sox has been in a drought for a long time. The last time they won the pennant was in 1959. For 1959, they were back in the World Series in 2005. And guess how long that took to get them back to the series? 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 79. It's like a 45 or 55-year drought back then. And Frank Thomas did play in the. Frank Thomas didn't play in the. Frank Thomas wasn't did play in 2005 Chicago White Sox, but he didn't play in the series back then. I felt really bad that he couldn't play in that World Series back then. The Chicago White Sox took on the Houston Astros. Guess who managed the Chicago White Sox back then in 2005? Just like this, the Fox also broadcast the 2005 World Series back then. Well, before the White Sox, before the White Sox played in U.S. Cellular Field, they also played in Comiskey Park back then. This kind of got out of their 40 or 35 drought, and also kind of trying to beat the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Broke the curse of the Black Sox scandals. The Angels could have been, the Chicago White Sox took on the Anaheim Angels back in 2005 in American League Championships. Just like when the Houston Astros beat the St. Louis Cardinals 4-2. But who beat which team won the series in 2005? I won't tell you until we reach the 1/30th mark. Because it won't be fair until we reach the 1/30th mark. Right now, the game against the Cleveland Guardians is 5:26. Right now, it's 5:26 p.m. right now, in my time. Right now, the game won't start until 6:07 p.m. against the Guardians versus the Yankees. And today, it could be anyone's ball game. But who could be anyone's ball game right now, and who might have a chance to go to the series? Who might have a chance to go to the American League Championship Series? Whichever team wins will have to face the Astros on October 19th. So right now, it's anyone's ball game right now. Yeah. Wonder if you guys are tired right now. Well, I am right now, but we're doing the best we can. I'd like to tell you who won the. I wish I could tell you like I did in all the others, but like you said, we have to wait until we reach the 130th mark, our 130 mark. That's when that's when I tell you who won. Peace. Hello. These two fingers right here is peace. But I can also make my finger signal called the peace or hello, whatever you can call it. In baseball, there was one guy, baseball pitcher, who threw 107, who threw above 100, 103, above 103. But I don't think, but that was a ball back then. It should have been a strike. But mostly the only guys who ever reached 103, that's the top area to get. I don't think no one could ever reach 107 before. Man, you have to be like really, man, you must have like a fast, man. Having those fastballs are really kind of tough back then. We're almost there. Well, 130, so I'll tell you, the Chicago White Sox beat the Houston Astros 4 games to 0 in the 2005 World Series. This is the game that this was the time that they broke the Black Sox scandal back then. You know, our manager was Ozzie Golian. He was manager of the year 2005. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, Ozzie Golian was the first guy to. He's the guy who turned that team around in 2005.
Let's go!
Sorry about that. You know, he's been to the series in '99. You know, Ozzie Golian did been to the series in 1999 when he played for the Braves. That was a great game back then. And right now, I'm going to tell you who won the World Series in 2006. This will be the last time. This will be the last time before I sign out. Our goal is to reach the 140 mark. Once we reach the 140 mark, then I will tell you who won the series, and against the St. Louis Cardinals versus the Detroit Tigers. Yep. Right now, once we reach our 140th mark, we will tell you who won the series back then. Man, I bet you guys are really tired right now. Well, so am I. Well, Fox broadcast the Major League Baseball game, broadcast the World Series game. There's also the Major League Baseball International. I don't know how many countries actually broadcast. You know, how about that? Even India even got 2005 World Series back then. 2006 World Series back then. You know, it's not every day India even knows what Major League Baseball is back then. At the time, they really even know what it looks like. Yep, the 2006 World Series. Who won that one? Let me ask him. He think may win the National League Championship Series tomorrow against the Phillies versus the Padres. Well, you know, like you said, it could be anyone's ball game right now. It could be either the Phillies or the Padres right now. We don't know. Yep, 2006 World Series was a great game back then. I don't know who actually won. Must be a tough game back then, hasn't it? I wonder if anyone's watching right now. Well, it's 138 right now, so we're not there yet. And I'm gonna tell you who won until I'm not gonna tell you who won the 2006 World Series right now. Besides, this is the final. This is the last time before I sign off. If that was me, I shouldn't touch anything right now because right now I want to tell you who won that 2006 World Series and reach our goal of 140 minutes. I wonder if anyone's even watching right now. It must be kind of tough. I wonder if anyone's even liking my broadcast. It must have been a tough game. Well, we're on 139. 59 more seconds left. Yep, 140. So the St. Louis Cardinals beaten the Detroit Tigers 4 games to 1. And yep, and they're back. Yep, and they're back. You know, they lost the Red Sox in 2004 World Series against the Red Sox. But at least now they at least finally got it. At least they finally got it. At least they finally got back in the series. Tony La Russo finally got a chance to win a World Series, get a World Series ring back then. So I think that's it. Well, that's it for today. And that's it for today, and who the prediction is. Right now the game in Game 5 is 6:07 p.m. So we only have it against the Guardians, the Yankees. Good luck, whoever wins. Good luck, and I'll see you good luck, and see you in the American League Championship on October 19th. Goodbye and good luck.